The European Union has announced a new package of sanctions against Russia over the war in Ukraine. Measures include lowering a cap on the price of Russian oil exports. Well, Moscow has launched yet another wave of drone missile attacks on Kyiv and the southern Ukrainian port of Odesa. The Kremlin says the bombardments are in retaliation for recent attacks on air bases deep inside Russia.
Another night of Russian drone strikes on the port city of Odesa. Officials there say several residential buildings, an emergency ambulance station, and a maternity ward were damaged or destroyed in the attack.
Unfortunately, there was a lot of damage tonight. Our maternity ward, which is known to all the Odessans, was damaged. Fortunately, nobody was injured. Everyone was in the shelter.
Elsewhere in the city, several casualties were reported. In the capital, Kyiv, Ukraine's air defenses were also busy repelling Russian aerial attacks. Officials say without their efforts, the damage could have been much bigger. Still, several residential buildings were hit across the city.
At 2 o'clock in the morning, the air raid siren went off, and the Russian Shahed attack drones started coming one by one. There were a lot of hits. One hit accurately, right into the apartment. As you can see, the apartment is gone. 3, to be precise.
The Kremlin has stepped up its strikes in recent days after Ukraine's spiderweb drone attack deep inside Russian territory destroyed or damaged dozens of strategic bombers. Since then, Moscow has launched hundreds of drones and many ballistic missiles into Ukraine in a series of nighttime attacks. The Russian Defense Ministry says it's carrying out strikes on military targets with high-precision weapons, a claim disputed by Ukraine.
They are targeting civilians. They're fighting against us, against civilians. They don't fight in the open. Who are they killing? Children, women, and the elderly. Who are they killing? Who are they fighting? What else can be said?
With efforts to reach a ceasefire stalled and both sides exchanging attacks, Ukrainian civilians are dreading another night of airstrikes.
I'm joined now by John Hardie. He's the Russia Program Deputy Director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and he joins us tonight from Atlanta, Georgia. It's good to have you on the program. We are seeing right now some of the worst air attacks against Ukraine since the war began, and at the same time, we've got prisoner exchanges taking place. Is that a contradiction?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think the through line is that Vladimir Putin really has no interest in peace, at least at the present moment, unless that peace means a Ukrainian capitulation. And of course, the Kyiv is not going to accept his terms. So right now we're seeing more fighting on the front lines as the Russians intensify their summer offensive, and unfortunately more long-range drone and missile strikes against Kyiv and other cities, killing civilians.
And are these attacks retaliation for Ukraine's recent drone strikes deep inside Russian territory, or is Russia starting a new phase of the war?
I think that the spate of recent attacks, given that they're happening after that Operation Spiderweb, could be seen as a Russian retaliation, and perhaps in Moscow are viewed that way. But really, they're not anything out of the realm of normality for Ukraine in terms of the targets, the apparent targets being attacked and the damage being inflicted, the size of the barrages, despite close to record numbers of drones and along with the different missiles. I mean, Ukraine is facing this on a pretty regular basis. So if this is Russia's retaliation for that fantastic Ukrainian operation, it really falls a bit flat.
Ukraine's President Zelensky has claimed that U.S. President Trump diverted tens of thousands of anti-drone missiles to the Middle East. What's your make of that claim?
Well, it followed a report from U.S. media to that effect. We didn't have the number of missiles reportedly diverted. But I think the fact that the Pentagon is, pushing resources toward the Middle East is probably, sounds like it's true. I think from the U.S. perspective, we always need to prioritize American warfighters. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I would love to see, and this is of course private. I would love to see the rationale. How intense was the need for those munitions in the Middle East, because they are quite useful to Ukraine, for counter drone operations and other things. So, I hope the Pentagon is making good faith decisions when it's deciding where to put those resources.
Let me ask you, Mr. Hardie, before we run out of time, ceasefire talks apparently are going nowhere. We've got fighting intensifying. Do you have any hope that a peaceful resolution can be reached in the short term?
Not in the short term. We'll reevaluate towards the end of the year as Russian gains hopefully will be slowing by that point as the weather deteriorates and Russia loses a lot more men and material. But right now, Putin seems determined to press forward.
John Hardie from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Mr. Hardie, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And for more, I can now speak to Frank Ledwidge. He's a senior lecturer in war studies at Portsmouth University. Frank, great to see you again. Now, we're seeing Russia apparently stepping up the number of drones and missiles aimed at Ukrainian cities. Is this really just retaliation for the Ukrainian strikes on Russia's strategic bombers, as Russia is claiming, or does it herald something else?
Good afternoon, Nicole. No, I think it heralds something else, and it reflects the huge increase and the huge efforts that Moscow's put into building a really, really large drone capability. So estimates now range from about 150 to 200 Geran drones, which in old money was Shaheeds. Only these are slightly more capable, being built every day, Shaheeds or indeed drone decoys. So I think what we're going to be seeing is this kind of pace of attack happening far more often. That notwithstanding, though, there's no doubt at all that over the last few days, that rhythm of attacks has increased, and that may well reflect the sort of retaliatory aspect or our retaliatory aspect of recent raids. But I think we're going to be seeing this rhythm again and again as we go forward.
How can Ukraine then brace for the increasing intensity and the increasing frequency also of these kinds of strikes? That, as I'm hearing there, you're saying we might be seeing in the future.
Well, right now it does seem that Russia has the edge in terms of the numbers of missiles. I mean, drones are just missiles. Some of them are faster and some slower. But let's say the number of missiles that Russia can deploy. But look, this war is characterized by a sort of leapfrogging, strategic leapfrogging. As soon as Russia gets an edge in one component, then Ukraine will match that. I have no doubt over the next few months that the Ukrainians will figure out a way of taking down these increasing numbers of missiles. Now, whether that's through electronic means, which may well happen, or through an increase in the efficiency of its anti-aircraft missiles, and perhaps using less expensive interceptors. I don't know. One thing I will say, though, is that President Trump's decision over the last few days to redirect 20,000 anti-drone interceptors to the Middle East, whilst understandable from an American perspective, is certainly very damaging from a Ukrainian one.
Yeah, we don't have much time, but I do want to get to that prisoner swap that should be unfolding right now. But President Zelensky had called it very complicated. Now, previous POW exchanges seemed less problematic. What is the issue here, you think?
Yeah, well, for about 3 years, the Russians have usually tried, or very regularly, put various spanners, as it were, in the works. Who knows what the issue is today? It may well simply be a matter of coordination or of logistics, or it may well be obstructiveness or indeed awkwardness. It's probably the wrong word. The answer is I don't know.
Peace talks seem to have stalled again very briefly. Do you think we're going to see any kind of agreement this year?
Oh, towards the end of the year, perhaps, but I think the ground war has a lot in it yet, so I don't think we should hold out too much hope for a major agreement anytime soon, unfortunately.
That's Frank Ledwidge. Thank you so much. Always great speaking to you.
Thank you, Nicole.
And the European Commission has just announced new sanctions against Russia over Ukraine. Let's cross straight to our correspondent in Brussels, Lucia Schulten. Lucia, what more can you tell us about these latest sanctions?
Yeah, so this is the 18th round of sanctions that the EU Commission is now proposing, and it aims to hit basically two sectors. And the one is the energy sector and the other one is the banking sector. On the energy sector, what the EU Commission is proposing, first of all, a complete transaction ban when it comes to Nord Stream 1 and 2. This is the pipelines. So this would also apply for the future. And with that, they want to send out the message Ursula von der Leyen said, that there is no back to as it was, no back to normal anymore. Then also in the energy sector, what they've been proposing is to lower the existing oil price cap, but also to list more of these vessels which are allegedly part of the so-called shadow fleet, which Russia is, according to the European Commission, using to circumvent existing sanctions in the energy sector. And then in the banking sector, there is already a ban in place for the so-called SWIFT system, which is a system to transfer money. And this should be broadened or transformed into a general transaction ban. And there are also another 22 Russian banks which are supposed to be listed. And then finally, the EU Commission also proposes to sanction banks, foreign banks, which are helping to circumvent the existing sanctions. So this is, in a nutshell, the new proposal.
How much support do you think there will be among EU member states for this proposal?
Yeah, so it's really important to see that this now has to be agreed by all 27 EU member states, and you need unanimity to do so. EU member states will only start discussing this. What I've been hearing from an EU senior diplomat, from a senior diplomat, is that there is a general good atmosphere around here in the European Union that this will pass. But nevertheless, there are always two big usual suspects, so to say. This is Hungary and Slovakia, and also the Slovakian Prime Minister just very recently came out and said that he would block Russian sanctions against Russia if it would harm the interests of his country. So this is one to watch. But what is also important to see is that so far they have been able to agree on already 17 sanction packages without bigger problems. But also, as an expert has told me before, you know, it does depend in the end a bit also on the costs of the member states, how heavy it is on them, so to say, how hard it is to agree on this or not.
Lucia Schulten in Brussels, thanks so much for that.